We are back with 35 years of Madden in 35 weeks, and for this entry, we're taking a look at John Madden Football 1993. As always, we have to spin for our team, and this year we're going to be playing as the 1993 Miami Dolphins. The 1993 Dolphins went 9-7, starting out a super impressive 9-2, but ended up losing 5 in a row at the end of the season to miss the playoffs completely. Part of the downfall was due to the fact that quarterback Dan Marino went down in Week 6 with a ruptured Achilles. Quarterback reins were handed over to Scott Mitchell, but their luck at the position would continue to suffer as he would dislocate his shoulder and be out for several weeks of the season. This meant the QB room at one point was down to a recently acquired Steve DeBerg, who was cut from the Bucs earlier in the season, ironically the team we played as last year, another free agent to shore up the position in Hugh Millen, and a very young Doug Peterson. Even though Doug Peterson was on the team the longest of those three, DeBerg would actually go on to start the 4 games needed while Mitchell was out, winning 2 of the 4 games. Don Shula would also become the most winningest coach of all time, passing George Hollis's record in a game against the Philadelphia Eagles, which coincidentally Doug Peterson came in to secure his first win as a quarterback against the team he would later on coach to win their first Super Bowl. The Dolphins' rushing was an interesting mixed bag, with Mark Higgs as their leading rusher with 693 yards and 3 touchdowns. However, Terry Kirby had 390 yards and 3 touchdowns rushing, but had 870 yards receiving with an additional 3 touchdowns. Their fullback Keith Byers had a Pro Bowl-worthy season of 269 rushing yards with 3 touchdowns and another 613 yards with 3 touchdowns receiving. An interesting note about Keith Byers is that officially in the NFL over his 12-year career, he played as a running back, a fullback, and a tight end. On the receiving side, their standout was Irving Fryer, who would reach 1,010 receiving yards and hauled in 5 touchdowns. The defensive side did not produce any Pro Bowlers, but that doesn't mean it was bad. Really, it was just an in-between year for Brian Cox, who was selected in 1992, 94, and 95, and in this season he still recorded a combined 122 tackles, 4 forced fumbles, 4 fumble recoveries, and 1 interception. Now that we know what team we're playing as and a little bit of their backstory, let's go ahead and talk about the game itself. As is tradition, we get to see a now animated John Madden at the beginning of the game. This is the last entry without the NFL license, but what they did add this year is legacy teams. Teams like the 77 Cowboys, perfect record 1972 Miami Dolphins, or the 85 Bears. This also includes 2 all-Madden teams, one based on legacy players and another on then-current ones. Just like before, each team's field is properly represented as either outdoors, indoors with real grass, or turf. You can also choose different weather for outdoor locales. There's some additional flair in the pre-game presentation with more detailed breakdowns of each team from coach, crowd movement in the pre-game screen, and the end zones feature more detail when showing the crowd. The ambulance also returns from the previous year, however, the non-affected players now leave the field and no one is plowed through while arriving. The overall game experience is very similar to the previous entry with some additional refinement. While on the field looks and controls the same, the scoreboard has been separated based on possession and the clocks are actually back to floating. There are also additional player animations and celebrations, like these linebackers headbutting here, and oftentimes are accompanied by lines from John Madden himself.
That's the way to hit him.
Although sometimes the line that plays, I'm not sure if I always agree with Coach.
That was the perfect pass.
The updated interactions are nice, however the game prioritizes these and it can take some precious time off the game clock, and if you're trying to force a play in the final seconds without any timeouts, the wasted 8 seconds or so in this lack of urgency can actually count against you. It seems the game needs to go through its animations before allowing the next step, so if I change personnel between plays, it would trot out the previous play's personnel in formation and then it would start the sequence for the next one instead of interrupting, and that's what happened here right before halftime. As far as my time with the Dolphins, the quarterback was definitely a step up from the Bucs of last year, and the game also seemed to be more responsive to the passing game overall. Passing is decided by how long you press the corresponding button to the receiver, and I felt I was really able to dial it in with this one, throwing some necessary lobs to move the chains or deep shots to keep us in games. Interestingly enough, this entry seemed to be giving out pass interference penalties more than the previous games that I've played, but that could just be luck. Miami's running game in this entry I'd put down as just competent. They weren't exactly speedsters, but I did find the occasional success when doing an option play. I really got to see what a fast, powerful running back was like when we played Buffalo 2 times. This game's Thurman Thomas equivalent was an unstoppable force and fast as hell, and when the ball got into his hands, he was gone. Is that the Icky Shuffle, by the way? During the game, the only problem would be the strange lag that would occur when punting. It's like the system has to catch up to what's happening, and I experienced this both on emulation and on real hardware. My Dolphins went 9-7, which per the 1993 season was not good enough for a postseason berth. My wins and losses were more even than theirs were, with my first half going 4-4 and my final half going 5-3. My largest margin of victory came against the Browns, where I won 28-14, and my largest loss was against Buffalo, where I was outscored 35-49. So far, these are all the Madden games that we've played, and here's my preferred entries from top to bottom on which ones I liked the most and which ones I'm not too crazy about. After playing all the Genesis entries so far, this is clearly the best of the bunch, and this is also the end of the non-licensed NFL era for Madden games. Going forth, the NFL license is attached to the series, which also brings about some changes to the overall presentation and how the games look and play. But with the beginning of a new era with the NFL license, I'm looking forward to Madden 94, and I'm looking forward to sharing that with you next time. Cheers!